Show that love. And this is what I think is old school, but sometimes you got to go back to old school. And as you mentioned, it's not just about the money. It's about who wants to think outside the box. And I'm not saying that when I look and I see where you look at evaluations and over 80 to 90% of the staff are supposed to be great. And I'm not saying they're not, but we got to do the same thing when we look at our administrators. We look at it from a standpoint that we become very competitive. I competed against Bayard every year because I knew they had parents who had much more financial support for their children than we did at Bancroft. So when I beat them on my test scores, that was the best thing for us. We celebrated, but I was always up there. Always, I was in the top. When I retired, I went into administration at another level, but I always first try to beat every teacher at school. I was the last one to leave at night, leaving at 6 o'clock. I answered all my phone calls. I answered all my bus phone calls on issues. Never did Mr. Vassos and myself leave that building, even on Fridays. We waited around because we wanted to make sure that every parent, whatever their concern was, we picked that phone up on the second ring. That's the truth. And any parent that would tell you about Bancroft is that they came there because we showed love to them. Not anything but love and respect. And we did the same for all of our children, the walkers and the bus riders, always. And I'm not knocking any administrator. I'm just saying is that if you really want to make it work, it's not easy. You have to put the time in. And when staff sees the leader of the school is there and going in your pocket and buying shoes and sneakers and developing a school store with all the clothing for all children. And we built that. The vice principal and I built that. And we did it till I retired. We had our own clothing store. We went and borrowed and begged and got shoes of all sizes, undergarment, anything they needed, sneakers, you name it, blouses, everything. And we did that all the years I was there. And I'm saying it to you now. I've never said this to anybody, but these are things that we did daily. Daily. No child went unfed. All field trips, we paid for it. I paid for everybody. So you couldn't say because you were living in Southbridge and you lived out there in Coverbridge Farms. No, everybody, I took care of that. We raised money. I didn't want children to worry about anything other than showing love and respect for each other. But you have to, I'm old school. So those are the things that I did. I wasn't told to do that. I wasn't told that you had to do that. So every day, I greeted every child coming in that building on 7th Street side of the building. Rain, sleet, snow, hail, I was out there. And the vice principal was there. And those kids loved that. So when they got off that bus crying, I knew something was wrong. They told me, I'm hungry. Come on, you go with me. And we did that all the time. There's not one child that can honestly tell you that they didn't love what we did for them. And this is what you have to do, Namdi, is you have to work and think about ways of looking at best practices that, you can make your school better. Every child that did not score a 3 or better, they had to stay with us, and we fed them after school, and we worked with them until they took the post test. And that's what we did. And we had the Saturday Academy, where I had those students had to come. I sat down with the parents, we had a nice meal, we talked about it, and then I worked with the parents on Saturday mornings. I had a room where we sit down and talk about, what are your concerns? I couldn't pay my bill this week. How much is it? How much does it cost to get your water turned on? This is all helping the child so they don't come to school in a certain manner. And so those are things that I'm sharing with you now. I've never shared with people, but I kind of get upset when I hear people talking about these issues why children are not learning. To some degree that might be true, but you have to roll your sleeves up and you get your staff to buy into it. My teachers were buying stuff for the children in the homerooms. Those are things that went on. I had teachers that never left. They wouldn't transfer. Not until I left, when I left the district, then they started transferring. But that was like the family atmosphere, that they all would bring their cars around the front of the school and sit in the parking lot, and they would stay to 6, 7 o'clock. And Mr. Vass and I'd be right there with them. And and children saw that, so they saw that love and respect. And I'm not saying every principal has to do that, but I'm telling you, it sure as heck doesn't hurt when you do things from a different perspective. And all the teachers that I just commend them. All the awards I ever received, that's because of the staff and the students and the parents. But you know, those are the things that you have to do. And so all of the testing and the way the scores are today, we had students who come from those same backgrounds. And I think what happens is that, you know, as one young man mentioned, there's nothing wrong with the principals, there's nothing wrong with the teachers. That might very well be. But I will say this, if something's not working, we have to try something else. And I'm not knocking any of the schools, or any of the districts, but I know for a fact that I would post my scores in my office, and we went over them day and night. We went over all the test scores during the summer. All those young people who did not score a 3, anything from a 2 to a 1, we provided help for them. You have to do it. And I think children are at a point in their lives now, they want leadership. And parents who are young and have had children at an early age, we need to develop parental type programs for them. We need to come up with mental health agencies involved in our schools. We need to get psychologists more involved with our schools. And more importantly, you have to learn to deal with your community. And it's better now because when we had busing, we only had the walkers. Now the children are there every day. Oh, I'd love to have a K-5 school. Need to hire me back. I need to come back. I had the lady tell me that today. She said, you know, Pritchett, if you come back, I'll come back. We need to bring the old school people back and start doing some of this work. And that's not a bad idea. We might not be able to, we might need a wheelchair push us around, but we can definitely get the points across. But I'd love to see my wife and them back in school. But I tell you, it would be amazing to see how we can make a difference. Not that the teachers aren't making a difference now.
Yeah, everything you said, you know, I think as we think about the plans that we need for our schools, you just described it, where we really need to address what happens both inside and outside of our schools, but from a school-based perspective, and realizing that issues come from outside of the school, inside of the school, and
Yes,
have
sir.
a plan to deal with them. I think you described it perfectly. And about us as a city, I think that the one thing that to me, your district in particular showed, and other districts as well, showed by having a strong leader in a challenging school and allowing and supporting that leader to lead that school in the right direction. That's what happened. I see a lot of that coming to me. That's what I hear when I read the priority schools and it's talking about having a strong leader.
Yes.
I'm almost certain you didn't make $160,000. People want to talk about it, but if you ask me, anybody in the city of Wilmington, the work that you did there, it was worth $160,000 even back then, because you really made a difference. You made that school into a community school. There are other examples of it happening, but you did it. You did exactly what we were talking about, having a plan for your school, bringing the community into the school. We need, as a city, we need that commitment again from the districts that serve us. We need commitment. We need commitment from our districts to do something different for our children. At the current rate, as the secretary said, they're not going to make the mark. They're not going to be college and career ready. So what are we going to do about it? How can we change that? We talked about resources. It's not all about resources, but a part of it is about resources. It takes a additional resources to truly fund urban school because of the additional resources that are.
Right.
So we need a different funding model. We're not there, but I think having the autonomy, the way to which to move money around that priority schools talks about is a step in that direction. We need something different. We need to really look at our schools and engage our schools differently. I often look at talking about race to the top, and they always almost like comparison schools, what states are doing.
Yes.
And a lot of comparison Delaware is with Tennessee. Tennessee, because we were the first two race to the top states, and with our funding about how they did it. And their urban center was what's the city in Memphis? I'm sorry, Memphis. Memphis had all of their challenge. I'm like, I know it starts with an M. Memphis. It's Memphis. Memphis had, I believe, like almost 70 of their 85, their lowest performing 85 schools. And so they had a concentration. So a lot of their focus is on what are we going to do in this area. And so for us to say the same thing, we have this concentration of schools that need assistance. Let's focus on it. I think that's what the priority schools plan is doing, is giving us the opportunity to do things differently in these schools. I think, again, our city needs to step up, to say what we can bring to the table, not just pointing fingers and say you're doing this, you're doing that, but also try to rally partnerships with our universities, with the businesses. Let's support DOE and let's support these schools. We have different issues as far as the number of districts serving our city. Everyone believes we'll be better served with a fewer number of districts. Do we need a Wilmington school district? Our city can't afford a school district, so that won't work. We can't go back to that, but we can do better than this 4-district model, and I think that's ultimately our plan as a city, what we have to begin to work toward. And then all of these other things are our children's performance, or their growth and their development, academically and socially. We'll see the change, but we have to begin to make that investment in our children. And again, this is a good step, a good first start for us to begin to have this dialogue.
Oh, I totally agree with that. It can't be business as usual.
Sure.
And I don't think, change does make people uncomfortable.
No question.
Really, it does.
No question.
And I look at it, we went from the Wilmington Public Schools to 1978. Right. We went into, we desegregated the schools. Mm-hmm. So we went from 7th through 9th grade to 4th through 5th grade. No, 4th through 6th grade. And then you went from that, District 1, District 2, 3 and 4, and then we came back again and came up with the names to where we are today. Correct. We went from just one single district. Everybody met with Dr. Biggs. Yep. He was the state, he was the superintendent for the whole state in Newcastle County. And we met monthly with him, and he was no joke. Right. No joke. And he made changes, fired some of my best friends, lost their jobs, and cut the line off in terms of different schools where they moved people around from Stubbs, moved them over to Shortridge. I saw those things happening, and it was interesting. Man, when you're a young buck and you come in, you see all these changes, and you're a principal, and you're like, well, where am I going to be? And Dr. Biggs, I never saw him other than the superintendent when he met with all of us. Never saw him in my school. But I knew that the word was, when I saw my friends getting chopped, I knew the guy was for real. Right.